Hello besties, welcome to Emma's Tales. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into the story. They laughed under their breath while I stood beside my mother's casket. I felt the tremor of it first, tiny wheezes of amusement skittering through the pews like mice. Then came the words, sharp enough to slice through organ music and incense. She's only here to sniff out the money. Art school dropout thinks grief pays dividends. I tightened my grip on the polished oak edge of the casket. The lid was closed now, satin white and pristine, a terrible contradiction to everything I remembered about Mom. Margaret Mbakwe Thomas, the woman who once kneaded bread dough at dawn, laughing because the flour painted her cheeks. There was nothing flour-dusted about this moment. Everything smelled of lilies and stale judgment. I fixed my eyes on the gilded crucifix above the altar and inhaled. One steady breath. Then another. Do not cry here, I told myself. Not in front of them. St. Adeline's had always been a modest church. Honey-colored pews, crooked hymn numbers hanging on a board, stained glass saints that leaked rainbows when the sun hit them just right. Today the saints glowed, but their light felt selective. It warmed every face except mine. My older brother, Malcolm, sat in the front row wearing a slim-cut black suit that probably cost more than my last year of rent. He didn't spare me a glance. On his left, Aunt Cecily dabbed non-existent tears. On his right, Malcolm's wife, Felicia, whispered something behind a gloved hand and smirked. The smirk landed on me like spit. I swallowed the burn in my throat. You came to honor her. Keep standing. The choir launched into Amazing Grace. I let the notes carry me, but even Grace wobbled when Cousin Trish leaned forward and hissed at my back. Guess art school didn't teach her loyalty. A chuckle answered her statement. Multiple chuckles. The sound braided with the hymn until I couldn't tell where music ended and mockery began. Father Brennan stepped up to the lectern, cleared his throat, and began the obituary. Margaret was a pillar of this community, the visionary founder of Mbakwe, Thomas catering, philanthropist, mentor, beloved wife and mother. He paused, eyes gliding across the church as though searching for someone. For me, I waited for my name. It never came. Instead, he continued with a neat list of charitable boards, awards, and finally, she is survived by her devoted son, Malcolm, and his wonderful wife. Silence. A fresh slice of nothingness where my name should have lived. The hymn resumed. Pictures flickered onto a screen. Mom breaking ground on the new test kitchen, Mom accepting the Chamber of Commerce award, Mom dancing at Malcolm and Felicia's wedding. Every slide held Malcolm like a matching accessory. I was absent from my mother's memories in a room full of strangers who knew exactly why. When the service ended, Malcolm rose first, guiding Felicia down the aisle with a hand on her elbow, gentle, practiced, presidential. People flocked to him. They pressed condolences into his palm like offerings to a king. I waited until the aisle cleared, then stepped into the slow-moving procession toward the cemetery limousine. An elderly usher touched my arm. Family rides up front, dear. I opened my mouth, but Malcolm's voice cut behind me. It's fine, Mr. Laird. She'll follow in her own car. His tone was calm, the kind of calm that left bruises. I swallowed whatever protest had formed and nodded to the usher. My rental sedan idled at the far end of the lot. I climbed in alone. Drizzle fell as we encircled the open grave. Umbrellas bloomed like black mushrooms. Mine refused to cooperate. I hinge jammed, leaving one side drooping. Rain slid down my neck in cold streaks. Father Brennan uttered the final blessing. The casket descended. I watched clumps of wet earth scatter across the lid, each thud a punctuation mark. Full stop. She's gone, and the last thing she heard from me was silence. I blinked hard, focusing on Malcolm's perfectly shined shoes. They remained spotless even as mud splashed. He never got dirty. He never slipped. He never missed Sunday dinner or quarterly revenue targets or Mom's chemo appointments. He was the golden sun, and I was the note omitted from the score. When the burial ended, mourners peeled away toward their cars. I lingered, brushing rainwater from Mom's headstone that wasn't even carved yet. Footsteps squelched behind me. "Hey, Nina Banana." Malcolm's childhood nickname for me tasted of mocking sugar now. I faced him. Rain blurred his silhouette. Felicia hovered behind, arms folded. "Did you enjoy the show?" he asked. "The funeral? It wasn't a show." "For you it was." Center stage, tragic prodigal daughter returns for her standing ovation. He smiled without warmth. Too bad the audience didn't clap. My cheeks stung. I came to say goodbye. "Sure." He slid his hands into pockets. "Well, you did that. Service is over. So is the charade." He leaned closer. "You'll want to be gone before tomorrow." Felicia's grin sharpened. "Way before," she added. I stared at them, rain dripping from my bangs, and managed a single word. "Why?" Malcolm's answer was a sigh of amused pity. "Because tomorrow you'll learn just how unwanted you really are." He turned, whispering something that made Felicia laugh. They walked away, sharing one umbrella, neither glancing back. Mom's estate sat 8 miles from the church. 2 acres of leafy seclusion wrapped around a stone colonial with white shutters and a sprawling veranda. I hadn't set foot inside in 5 years. The exterior looked the same, but the interior felt stage-lit, more museum than family home. Caterers in black vests threaded between antique tables carrying trays of miniature quiches and cucumber tea sandwiches, Mom's signature funeral menu for clients. Guests huddled in clusters, grazing on nostalgia. They parted around me like I was a pillar they'd rather not graze. Aunt Cecily intercepted me at the foyer. Her perfume, gardenia and something stale, burned my throat. "Sweetheart," she began, voice syrupy. "Such a shame you couldn't visit when your poor mother was suffering." I opened my mouth. No sound emerged. "She asked for you, you know." Cecily pressed a napkin into my hand, as if it were evidence. Kept wondering why her baby girl wouldn't pick up the phone. I held the napkin like it might combust. "Well," Cecily sighed, smoothing her pearls, "at least you're here now. Closure is important, even for estranged children." She drifted off, leaving a whiff of judgment hanging like incense. In the parlor, Malcolm stood at the fireplace, cup of espresso perched elegantly in hand. Felicia flanked him, and between them Cousin Trish giggled like a sorority pledge. Their laughter tapered when I hovered near the doorway. Malcolm lifted his espresso toward me. "Nina, would you like to say a few words? Tell everyone about your latest open mic night in LA? I'm sure Mom would have loved to see your career trajectory." Snickers. Heat rushed up my neck. "I'd rather talk about Mom," I said. "By all means." He gestured to the room. 40 faces pivoted toward me. My pulse drummed in my ears. I stepped forward. The chandelier buzzed overhead. "Mom taught me that love isn't measured by proximity, or by showing up when she needed you," Felicia interjected. A ripple of titters followed. My vision blurred at the edges. I pushed on. My choices disappointed her. I know that. But she never stopped mailing me her recipes, even when I didn't reply. She never. Malcolm clapped once, slow, theatrical. "Spare us the speech. You forfeited your right to speak for her when you ran." Blood thundered in my ears. I searched the crowd for an ally, anyone. Faces turned away. Even Uncle Richard, Mom's gentle brother, avoided my gaze. "I'm sorry for your loss," I whispered, though I wasn't sure to whom. The sentence crumbled as soon as it left my tongue. Malcolm lifted his espresso in final salute. Conversation resumed as though I'd flickered off like a faulty light bulb. I slipped out, heart pounding. The upstairs corridor smelled of lemon polish and old carpets. Portraits lined the walls. Mom at charity galas, Malcolm at high school graduation, family Thanksgiving spreads minus me. I paused beside a frame of Mom holding a blue ribbon at a cooking competition. Her smile glowed. I raised trembling fingers to the glass. "I try to call," I muttered. The hallway swallowed my confession. Behind me, footsteps padded. I turned to find Cousin Jonah, the quiet one, leaning against the banister. He had the same sandy curls from childhood, now tamed with gel. His expression flickered between apology and warning. "You really might want to leave before tomorrow," he murmured. My throat tightened. "Why?" Jonah glanced down the stairs, making sure no one listened. His voice dropped to a hush. "Because they're about to remind you, loudly, how unwanted you are." He slipped away before I could question further. I stood alone, the banister pressing into my back, heartbeat echoing in my ears. Something cold slid down my spine that had nothing to do with the broken umbrella or the drizzle outside. I drove back to the roadside Sea Breeze Motel, neon sign flickering. The room smelled of bleach and ocean rot. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the stiff floral bedspread. For a long time I stared at the ceiling, counting the stains where water had seeped through plaster. 3, 5, 8. My phone buzzed. Camilla, my best friend, FaceTimed from 2 time zones away. "You surviving?" she asked, hair in curlers, eyes soft with concern. "Define surviving," I croaked. She waited. "They erased me from her obituary," I said. "From the slideshow. From everything." She flinched. "Malcolm. Running the show. He told me to leave before tomorrow." Camilla snorted. "Typical. What's tomorrow?" "The will reading. Noon at Ellis and Price." "Then you go," she said. I hesitated. What if Mom really did cut me out? "Then you'll learn it firsthand." Not through Malcolm's smirk. She leaned closer to the screen. "Listen, Nina. They don't get to rewrite your story." Tears pricked my eyes. Maybe I already did that when I left. "You left to save yourself," she said firmly. "Not to hurt her. There's a difference." I wiped my cheek. "I want to believe that." "Believe it. And show up tomorrow. Wear something they can't ignore." I glanced at the suitcase near the door. Inside, a simple black shift dress, nothing flashy. "I'll do my best." "Your best is enough." She blew a kiss. "Text me after." When the call ended, quiet swallowed the room. I rose, crossed to the desk, and opened my journal. The pen felt heavy, but I forced ink onto the page. If the truth is ugly, let me see it with my own eyes. I closed the journal, throat tight. Outside, the Atlantic surf roared beyond the highway, relentless and unseen, but undeniably there, just like my grief. Morning peeled back the night with a milky sun. I showered, pulled the black dress over still damp skin, and tied my curls into a low knot. No eyeliner, no gloss, just a thin veil of courage. In the mirror, I rehearsed a single sentence. "I have every right to be here." It sounded brittle at first. I repeated it until the words steadied. I gathered my bag, slipped the journal inside, and locked the motel door behind me. The sea wind cut through the parking lot. I inhaled its brine like a dare. As I slid into the driver's seat, my phone pinged. A new email. Ellis and Price, reminder. Estate reading, 12 p.m. The clock on the dashboard read 9:17. 3 hours to decide whether to obey fear or truth. I started the engine. Gravel crunched. The motel receded in the rearview mirror, replaced by rolling dunes and a strip of road pointing inland, toward the law office, toward Malcolm's threat, toward an answer I had fled from far too long. I pressed the accelerator. Rain clouds gathered ahead, bruised and swollen, promising another downpour. Let it rain, I thought. Let it wash whatever comes next. And for the first time since stepping off the plane, I felt something faint but solid rise in my chest, not hope, exactly, but the courage to face the storm. Tomorrow is today, I told myself, eyes fixed on the horizon. And I'm not leaving. I woke before dawn to the motel's ancient refrigerator rattling like bones in a closet. The room was dark except for a bar of light slipping beneath the heavy drapes. I lay still, letting the hiss of distant highway traffic blur into the faint crash of Atlantic surf, and for a moment I pretended I was 12 again, still in the upstairs bedroom of our old house, waking to the smell of Mom's cinnamon rolls. But memory is cruel in that way. It offers comfort only long enough to crack you wide open. As the neon digits on the bedside clock bled into 5:12 a.m., the ache behind my ribs reminded me where I was, why I was here, and how badly I wanted to drive straight back to Los Angeles. Instead, I sat up, swung my feet to the threadbare carpet, and stared at my reflection in the streaked mirror across the room. My curls had frizzed overnight, mascara smudged beneath eyes too wide, too raw. "You have every right to be here," I repeated, but the words sounded thin in the stale air. I thought of the last real conversation I'd had with Mom, not the polite calls or holiday texts that followed, but the moment everything broke. It was 5 years ago in the catering test kitchen, stainless steel counters gleaming beneath fluorescent lights. Mom stood at the center island piping meringue kisses onto a baking sheet while I hovered by the door, acceptance letter to the West Coast Conservatory of Music balled in my fist. "You can compose symphonies right here," she'd said, not looking up. "Charleston has orchestras too." "Mom, it's not the same. They offered me a scholarship." "A scholarship won't pay the bills when it's gone." I swallowed hard. "Neither will piping pastries if I hate every minute." She set down the pastry bag, finally meeting my eyes, brown meeting brown, stubborn flint striking stubborn flint. "Your father and I built something worth inheriting. You'd throw that away for a gamble?" "It isn't a gamble if it's the only thing that makes me breathe." Her shoulders tensed. "Music isn't air, Nina. Food is. Community is. Maybe for you." The silence after that felt physical, as if the ovens had sucked every molecule of oxygen from the room. I turned before she could see me cry. She didn't call after me, and her quiet hurt more than any shouted curse. 2 weeks later, I boarded a plane west. We spoke once, awkward and brief, after Dad's heart scare the following year. Then life sped up. Classes, gigs and dive bars, part-time work at a vintage guitar shop. Every phone call I made rang until voicemail. Every birthday card I mailed vanished into the void. After a year of silence, I told myself she'd chosen to erase me, until yesterday's revelation hinted at another hand on the scissors. I showered quickly, letting the water pound the motel tiles while memories looped. When I emerged, dawn had painted the sky pale pink. I dressed in jeans and a gray cotton tee, then padded barefoot to the rusted mini coffee maker. The motel packets brewed something bitter enough to strip paint, but I drank it black, cupping the styrofoam for warmth while flipping through my journal. Page after page held half-songs scrawled in midnight ink, guitar tabs, broken rhymes, random chords. Somewhere between the notes lay every unsent apology I'd rehearsed for Mom. They felt pointless now. The casket was sealed, the slideshow played, the obituary delivered minus my name. Too late echoed with every sip. Yet beneath sorrow, a different heat pulsed. Anger at the voices that laughed in holy space. Anger at Malcolm's contempt. Anger at myself for letting guilt pin me to the ground for half a decade. I needed air. The sea breeze sat on a strip of beach highway flanked by shuttered surf shops and a 24-hour diner that smelled of grease even from the sidewalk. I walked past it, hoodie pulled up against the sharp wind, and followed the dunes to a boardwalk that stretched like a narrow spine along the shore. The horizon glowed peach and lavender. Waves rolled in, slow and heavy. Mom loved dawn walks whenever business stress tangled her nerves. She'd come home with pockets full of shells, cheeks pink from wind, saying the ocean cleared the mental palate. I had not inherited her fearlessness of early morning chill, but I did inherit the restless mind. I pulled my phone from my pocket and thumbed open the message thread with Camilla. 2 blue ticks showed she was already awake, or hadn't slept. "Me you up? Cam. Always for drama. FaceTime?" I found a patch of dune grass to shield me from wind and hit call. Her face filled the screen, framed by curlers and neon eye patches. "Girl, you look like a haunted painting," she murmured. "Night that bad?" "Realization worse," I said. "I can't stop replaying the last fight." Camilla shifted, propping her phone on a makeup organizer. That argument was fueled by fear on both sides. You wanted freedom. She wanted certainty. She gave certainty to Malcolm, though. I kicked Sam with my sneaker. He never had to beg for belief. Golden children rarely do, she muttered, then leveled her gaze. What do you want now? To hear her voice again, I whispered. And I guess the truth. That's at noon, friend. You're going. She said it like law. My throat tightened. They'll spin it their way. Malcolm said Mom left nothing for me. If that's so, let the lawyer say it, not Malcolm. Camilla dabbed concealer beneath one eye with practice flicks. Closure comes from facing the blow, not ducking it. A gull screeched overhead, slicing the hush. I'm scared, I admitted. I'd worry if you weren't. But fear's just proof something matters. Show up anyway. I closed my eyes, letting the ocean roar louder than doubt. Okay. Camilla smiled soft. Now, get breakfast, hydrate, and iron something that screams competence. Text me after the reading. I will. I paused. Thank you for staying on the line. Always. I ended the call and stared at the pale light breaking over water. For the first time since yesterday's humiliation, my lungs expanded without pain. Back at the diner, Formica tables gleamed under fluorescent bulbs. Locals hunched over newspapers, and a waitress poured coffee with mechanical cheer. The air smelled of bacon and bleach. I sat at the counter, ordered toast and scrambled eggs, and nursed a second cup of coffee. Across from me, a weathered man in a shrimper's jacket nodded politely. Behind his kind eyes, I saw Mom's cater waiters, the army of temporary hires she treated like family, slipping them leftovers, paying tuition for one kid, rent for another. Her generosity had overflowed like bowls of gumbo on holiday banquets. What would she think of me now, skinny, tired, chasing cords instead of clients? For the 100th time, shame gnawed at my ribs. But next came anger at the unreturned calls, unanswered letters. Which version was truth? The bill arrived. I paid, left a tip that emptied half my cash, and stepped outside as sun finally cleared the horizon, flooding the parking lot gold. Back in the motel, I ironed a navy sheath dress Camilla had insisted I pack. Boardroom vibes, boo. As the iron hissed, memories pressed themselves onto me. 2. Me at 9, sitting on the kitchen floor, banging wooden spoons against pots while Mom tested gumbo seasoning, laughing at my offbeat rhythm. Me at 15, plucking Mom's old guitar under the magnolia tree while she arranged canapes for a fundraiser, humming along even though she claimed she was tone deaf. Me at 21, telling her I'd applied for conservatory auditions, her smile faltering before she disguised it behind tasting spoon. Each recollection came with an aftertaste of both love and sorrow, proof we'd spoken a language neither fully understood. Iron cool, dress crisp, I hung it on the bathroom door and stepped into the shower again, to rinse away fryer grease and diner coffee and maybe, if water had magic, rinse away doubt. My phone buzzed the moment I shut off the water. Unknown number, then voicemail icon. Fingers trembling, I hit play. Ms. Nina Mbakwe Thomas, the lawyer's assistant said. Just confirming your attendance today at noon. If you need anything, call our office. I exhaled sharply. Even automated courtesy felt like a summons. Another beep. Voicemail from Dad's old number. Heart stalling, I listened, but it was Malcolm. Little sister, his voice drawled, syrupy and cold. If you're smart, you'll skip this spectacle. You didn't belong yesterday. You won't belong today. Save yourself the embarrassment. Click. I stared at the phone, heat rising up my throat. The coward hadn't even blocked his caller ID. Did he think veiled threats would scare me away? I deleted the message, then did something reckless. Navigated to the nearly forgotten contact labeled Mom. 2 years ago, I'd stopped calling after each ring cut to voicemail. But the number still existed, and maybe the line, like grief, lingered. I dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Absence felt final this time. A door sealed shut. I slipped the phone onto the dresser, anchoring the urge to hurl it. By 11 a.m., I was dressed, navy sheath, low heels, curls pinned into a loose chignon, Mom's old opal studs in my ears, my only heirloom, pocketed years ago before leaving home. I applied sheer lip balm, practiced a neutral expression in the mirror, and grabbed my notebook and a pen. In the parking lot, gulls circled the dumpsters. I climbed into the rental, the leather scorching hot even in spring. The drive inland felt shorter than yesterday, though every mile wound the tension tighter around my ribs. Stoplights flashed red longer than usual. I used the pauses to practice breathing. 4 counts in, hold 2, 6 counts out. Camilla's rule for pre-performance jitters. At 11:47, the sandstone facade of Ellis and Price attorneys rose ahead. I parked in Visitor, killed the engine, and sat. My pulse drummed so loudly I nearly missed the ping of a new text. Camilla, front row, center stage. Curtain up, maestro. Musical notes, Purple Heart. I smiled despite the tremor in my hands, typed a single heart emoji in reply, then stepped into the warm, humid air. Inside the lobby, air conditioning chilled my arms. The receptionist directed me to the 18th floor. Mirrors in the brass elevator reflected a woman I barely recognized, poised, chin high, eyes shadowed, with too many sleepless nights. Between floors 14 and 15, memories lifted me somewhere else. Mom perched on my dorm bed freshman year, smoothing new sheets, promising to visit for midterm concerts. Mom sending a box of lemon bars express mail because nothing in LA tasted like home. My reply letter, pages of gratitude and longing, stamped and sent, and never answered. Pain lanced through me. Had she read those letters? Or did they sit in some hidden drawer, unopened like the ones she'd apparently found for me years later? The elevator chimed. 18th floor. Game on. A hallway stretched ahead, plush carpet muffling footsteps. At the far door, frosted glass etched with conference suite A, muted voices rose and fell. I inhaled. My fingers grazed the opal studs, small moonstones of courage. As I reached for the handle, the door opened and Malcolm stepped out, nearly colliding with me. His surprise flickered, then vanished beneath cool disdain. "You made it," he said flatly. "I was invited," I replied. A thin smile. "For now." He brushed imaginary lint from his sleeve. "Hope you're prepared." "For what?" "The truth." His eyes hardened. "Truth is relative." He stepped aside, gesturing grandly. "After you." I walked past him into the polished room, where mahogany shone like still water and tension charged the air. A long oval table dominated the space. Family members occupied plush chairs, Aunt Cecily, Cousin Trish, Uncle Richard, 2 board members from the company, Felicia, with her lipstick perfect. All conversation halted as I entered. Every gaze landed on me, heavy as sandbags. I felt their weight and, to my own surprise, didn't buckle. Mr. Gerald Price, senior partner, rose from the head of the table. He was silver-haired, tall, eyes clear and direct. "Miss Mbakwe Thomas," he greeted, voice warm. "I'm glad you could join us. Please have a seat." A single vacant chair waited midway down the table, neither at the foot nor the head. I crossed the room, heels clicking, and sat. Leather creaked. My hands found steadiness on the table's edge. Malcolm slid into his seat opposite, expression composed. Felicia reached under the table and squeezed his hand, nails lacquered blood red. Mr. Price cleared his throat. "We'll begin in just a moment." He glanced at the clock, 11:59. I exhaled, slow, deliberate. Whatever comes next, it's Mom's voice, not theirs. Silence settled like dust motes in sunlight. A distant city bell began its 12th chime. I pictured Mom's face the last time I saw her, stern and hurt, yet proudly alive. I pictured the cinnamon smell of her kitchen, the warmth of dough between nervous fingers, the softness behind her reprimands. For 5 years, I'd carried a ghost shaped by regret. Now, in this quiet half-breath before revelation, I felt that ghost press a hand to my shoulder, not scolding, not shaming, but guiding me to sit tall. The final chime faded. Mr. Price opened a slim laptop and spoke. "Margaret left instructions for a statement to be played before her will is read. It contains messages for each of you. My pulse hammered. At the corner of my vision, Malcolm's jaw tightened. Mr. Price pressed play, and the screen sprang to life. Mom in a floral blouse, eyes bright though ringed by illness, seated in her sunlit study. I sucked in a breath that tasted of citrus and sorrow and something fierce, the belief that even death couldn't silence the truth. And then her voice filled the room. The projection screen glowed against the paneled wall, and every person in Conference Suite A seemed to stop breathing at once. My mother, elegant even in illness, filled the frame. She wore her favorite indigo wrap, the one that always smelled faintly of vanilla and thyme, and she sat in the carved bamboo armchair that used to live beside our kitchen window. Behind her, sunshine spilled through lace curtains, turning dust motes into glitter. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes carried the weight of knowing she would never speak to us again, except like this. "If you're watching this," she began, voice soft but unwavering, "then my race is run, and I trust you've gathered as I asked. No lawyers bickering, no cousins live streaming, no talk of quarterly reports until you've heard me through." A nervous laugh fluttered at the far end of the table and died just as quickly. "I loved three things above most," she continued, folding her hands in her lap. "Good food, honest work, and my children. This message is about the third." I felt the room tilt. My heartbeat thrummed behind my eardrums. Across from me, Malcolm crossed one ankle over his knee, studied a speck on his cuff, then glanced sideways at Felicia. She squeezed his hand beneath the table, her diamond wedding band flashing like a warning light. "Nina," Mom said, eyes locking straight into the camera, and, by extension, straight into me. "Sweet girl, you have always been melody in a house built on recipes. I didn't recognize your music at first, and for that I'm sorry." My throat constricted. The hushed room amplified every swallow. "Some of you told me she abandoned us. Some said she never called. Some even suggested she cared more about applause than family." She inhaled carefully, ribs barely lifting beneath the wrap. "But 3 months ago, while reorganizing my files, yes, again, Malcolm, I discovered a locked drawer behind the contractor invoices. Inside it were 43 unopened envelopes, all addressed to me in Nina's handwriting." A collective gasp rippled. Chairs creaked, whispers hissed. I sat stone still, knuckles white against the leather armrest. Birthday cards. Christmas postcards from cheap motels during her tour. A graduation program she hoped I'd attend. Letters explaining why she left, pleading for another chance. All silenced by a hand I trusted. Her gaze drifted off camera as if searching for the courage to continue. "I read everyone." Her voice cracked, then steadied. And each page tasted of regret, hers and mine. I realized my silence had been manufactured, my grief weaponized. Malcolm's expression hardened to marble. Aunt Cecily lifted a trembling hand to her pearls. Uncle Richard shifted uncomfortably. "To the person who hid those letters," Mom said, tone sharpening like a blade, "you hurt me more than cancer ever could. You twisted my motherhood and stole years I can't reclaim." She didn't name names, but her eyes flicked unmistakably toward where Malcolm now sat in real life. A bead of sweat rolled along his temple. "To Nina," she resumed, voice tender once more, "I never stopped loving you, darling. You weren't absent. You were silenced. And I will not let death keep that silence intact." Tears blurred my view of the screen. I gripped the pen in my lap until plastic creaked. Mom adjusted the silk scarf at her throat. "Many of you think this company is about profit margins and magazine spreads," she said.
No.
It began at a folding table outside our shotgun house. Feeding shift workers who couldn't afford a hot lunch. Food is memory. Food is community. Soul, flavor, and heart. She smiled, faint but fierce. "Nina understands soul. She always has, even when I was too proud to taste it." Behind me, someone inhaled sharply. I didn't turn to see who. She took a slow breath. "I have amended my estate accordingly. If that shocks you, consider why truth must arrive packaged in surprise." "Gerald," she addressed Mr. Price directly, Please uphold my instructions exactly." The screen darkened for a beat, then brightened again. She looked almost relieved. "Malcolm, my son," she said, "you are brilliant, diligent, and natural leader. But leadership requires sunlight, and secrets rot in the dark." A muscle twitched in Malcolm's jaw. "You will receive $150,000, held in trust, released in structured increments, contingent upon transparent monthly audits." Gasps again. Malcolm's knuckles whitened around his chair arm, but he kept silent. "To my extended family, Aunt Cecily, Uncle Richard, beloved nieces and nephews, you each taught me generosity in different seasons. You will find personal bequests, charitable donations in your names, scholarships endowed for your children." Cousin Tricia's eyes widened, calculating. "And to my daughter Nina," Mom said, voice softening like butter in a warm pan, "I leave the home where you once filled hallways with song, my private savings account, and 51% controlling interest in Backwee Thomas Catering." The air sucked out of the room. I could not breathe. "You may choose to sell, to oversee, or to appoint a leadership team you trust. I only ask that you keep the kitchen lights on for those who hunger, body or spirit." She paused, tears shining in her own eyes now. "I love you, my children. Let truth feed you better than pride ever could. Goodbye." The screen faded to black. The overhead lights blinked back on, cruel and bright. No one spoke for at least 10 seconds. Then voices burst like fireworks. Unprecedented. She was manipulated. This has to be contested. Felicia's chair screeched as she shot upright. "You can't be serious," she snapped at Mr. Price. "Dying people aren't lucid." The attorney folded his hands. Mrs. Thomas recorded 3 separate videos over 3 months, each notarized, witnessed by 2 staff members, and reviewed by her physician for mental clarity. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. "If you imagine I'll let the company be run by someone who thinks a stockpot is a symbol, you're mistaken." I found my voice, shaky but audible. "Are you admitting you intercepted my letters, Malcolm?" His gaze sharpened. "I'm admitting nothing. But even if I had, it would have been for her own good. She needed focus, not heartbreak." Anger flashed red-hot behind my ribs. "You mean she needed stories that made you indispensable?" Aunt Cecily sputtered. "Children, please, decorum." I turned to Mr. Price. "Is the will final?" My voice felt foreign in its steadiness. He nodded. "Unless a successful contestation proves fraud or coercion, it stands." Malcolm exhaled a cold laugh. "Fraud, coercion, diminished capacity. We'll explore every avenue." Mr. Price lifted a small cedar chest from beneath the table. "Your mother anticipated objections. She left physical evidence, the box of letters, certified chain of custody, and handwriting verification." He placed it gently between us. My own looping script peeked through the slats. Ink I'd thought vanished into oblivion. I reached out but stopped, fingertips hovering. Touching them now felt too intimate for so public a moment. Felicia glared at me. "What do you even know about running a corporation?" Heat rose on my neck, but Mr. Price answered first. "Mrs. Thomas also left a transition plan. Nina may appoint an interim team while she learns." He slid a thick envelope toward me. Names, recommendations, timelines. I stared at it. The weight of possibility pressed against my chest, equal parts terror and wonder. Malcolm leaned forward. "You think the board will accept a guitarist in the executive seat? Investors will bolt." "Perhaps," Mr. Price said evenly, "but majority shareholders decide board composition." He looked at me with quiet encouragement. I swallowed. "I'm not here to demolish what she built," I said, voice steadier now. "I'm here to honor it. Maybe expand the menu." Several heads tilted, curiosity softening scorn. Malcolm stood, palms flat on the table. "This is outrageous." His voice cracked the air. Mother was manipulated by attorneys, by misdiagnosed sentimentality. "No," I said. The single word surprised me with its calm authority. "She simply opened a drawer you hoped stayed shut." His eyes flared. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind the arrogance. Mr. Price gathered papers. We will move to signatures confirming receipt of the estate summary. He passed documents down the table. Pens clicked. Pages rustled like restless wings. When Malcolm's copy reached him, he pushed it aside. I'll sign nothing until my legal team reviews every frame of that video. That is your right, Mr. Price replied. But the trust and shares transfer automatically at close of business tomorrow. Litigation delays distribution, not governance. Felicia whispered furiously in Malcolm's ear. He straightened, smoothing his tie. Enjoy your moment, little sister. It won't last. I met his glare with a level gaze. It'll last as long as truth does. The meeting adjourned into fractured conversations. I slipped the transition envelope into my bag, then stepped into the corridor where afternoon sun pooled across burgundy carpet. My knees wobbled, adrenaline finally crashing. I fumbled for my phone, calling Camilla. She answered on the first ring. Well, she breathed. I pressed my back to the wall, tears finally spilling. She gave me everything. A beat of stunned silence then. Baby, breathe. I can't. Malcolm went feral, Cam. I'd pay to see that, but focus. Her voice gentled. What exactly did she leave? The house. Savings. Controlling shares. And a plan. My laugh came out half sob, half wonder. She recorded a whole plan. Camilla exhaled a low whistle. Your mom served 5-star karma. Footsteps approached. I lower my voice. I have to go. Media may be outside. Text me when you're safe, she insisted, then softened. I'm proud of you, maestro. The call ended. I pocketed the phone, breathing in citrus-scented hallway air that felt suddenly new. As I rounded the corner toward the elevators, Malcolm blocked the path. Felicia hovered a step behind him. He studied me. You always did know how to steal the spotlight. I didn't steal anything, I said quietly. Mom handed me the torch. Then prepare to burn, he hissed. Before I could respond, the elevator dinged and opened. He stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. Ladies first. I entered, pivoted to face him. You hid my words, I said, voice low. But you can't hide hers. The film is forever. Doors slid shut. The last I saw were his eyes, stormy, calculating. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with subdued chaos. Relatives phoning attorneys, board members whispering strategy. I slipped to a quiet corner lobby sofa and finally lifted the cedar chest lid. My handwriting greeted me like an old melody. Dear Mom, I know I messed up leaving like that. Happy birthday. I baked a cake in my crappy apartment, sent you the recipe. They offer me a small tour next month. Wish you could hear the closing number. The ink had bled in some where Charleston humidity kissed paper edges, but each word pulsed alive. I pressed my palm over the stack and closed my eyes, allowing grief and gratitude to mingle. When I opened them, Mr. Price stood nearby. Your mother asked me to ensure you received those intact, he said softly. Take your time. The security team can escort you to your car when you're ready. I nodded, voice somewhere else. Thank you. He started to leave, then paused. She listened to every track you released, you know. She had them queued on her phone during chemo sessions. He smiled, said the music helped the meds go down. My breath hitched. I didn't know. Now you do. He walked away, leaving me alone with the letters and a future that felt equal parts mountain and map. I left the building through a side exit to dodge local reporters gathering at the front. A security guard carried the cedar chest to my trunk. I thanked him, slid behind the wheel, and just sat. Through the windshield, late-day sunlight painted the parking lot bronze. I expected triumph to roar inside me, but mostly there was quiet, a hush like the moment a song ends before applause begins. Because the performance wasn't over, it had merely changed stages. I touched the steering wheel, thinking of ovens preheating, of sheet music curling on a piano, of market spreadsheets and soup lines, of hungry bellies and hungry souls. Mom had trusted me with all of it. I pressed the ignition button, engine humming. Before shifting into gear, I opened voice memos and hit record. Mom, I whispered, I'm sorry it took me this long to hear you. But I hear you now. I'll try to feed them, like you did. Like you taught me, even when I didn't realize I was learning. I ended the recording, saved it as first promise. The sun slipped lower, gilding the world through tear-blurred eyes. I pulled out of the lot, letters safe in the trunk, a company resting on my shoulders, and a resolve new, trembling, but bright, taking shape inside my chest. Ahead lay roads I'd never driven, kitchens I'd never commanded, boardrooms that smelled of lavender polish and latent hostility. But somewhere in all that was a heartbeat of melody waiting to meet the taste of home. And I intended to serve it. The conference room detonated the instant the lights came back on. This is a mistake. Malcolm's chair slammed backward into the paneled wall. She was sick when she recorded that. His voice ricocheted off glass and mahogany, startling the junior associates who'd come to witness the reading. Mr. Gerald Price lifted 2 fingers for calm. Your mother recorded 3 statements, Mr. Thomas, each a month apart. All were notarized, witnessed, and accompanied by neuropsych evaluations confirming full mental clarity. Felicia tugged at Malcolm's sleeve, whisper pleading for restraint, but he shook her off. No doctor in Charleston will swear to that on the stand. They already have. Price slid a folder across the table. Independent specialists from MUSC. Signed affidavits. Malcolm's jaw flexed so hard a vein stood out at his temple. Then she was coerced. By whom? I heard myself ask. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, like a violin string tuned a hair too tight. The room froze, every face pivoting toward me. He sneered. By the lawyer who stands to bill endless hours defending this insanity, and by a daughter who... Careful, Mr. Price cut in, tone suddenly iron. Accusing the deceased of incompetence without evidence is one thing, defaming counsel is another. I'll remind you you're still on retainer here. Pending shareholder approval. Gasps webbed through the relatives. Aunt Cecily's pearl necklace clicked against itself as she wheeled from Malcolm to me, eyes wide. Malcolm opened his mouth, closed it, then ground out. Fine. Let's talk evidence. Price adjusted his glasses, produced a flatter black envelope. Your mother anticipated that too. She commissioned a private audit of company finances, specifically the Waterline Tower project and 2 subsidiary accounts. He slid the envelope directly to me. Wax sealed, crimson against ebony. Mrs. Thomas requested Ms. Nina be the first to break that seal. Felicia's complexion drained to chalk. Malcolm slipped from anger to something nearer panic. You're implying wrongdoing? Price folded his hands. I'm implying nothing. Your mother's auditor laid out numbers, signatures, and discrepancies totaling just over $4.8 million. He let the figure land like a hammer. Transferred through shell vendors your office approved. Silence collapsed over us. Heavy, suffocating. Even the HVAC seemed to hush. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, as if every word in Mom's video had excavated a deeper chamber of grief, and now Malcolm's outrage pressed in like water. My fingers hovered over the wax, then withdrew. I'm not ready to open that. Malcolm scoffed. Of course you're not. You don't even understand what you own. Neither did Marie Curie the first time she held radium, I said, surprising myself. Understanding comes after courage, not before. A faint murmur of approval drifted from Uncle Richard's end of the table. I turned to Mr. Price. I need time to digest all this, to read the audit privately, to determine how best to honor my mother's intent. Price nodded. The bylaws allow a 30-day provisional period before assuming day-to-day authority. You may appoint interim leadership. I'll do that. I stood, legs trembling but locked. The letters in my bag seemed to whisper like parchment wings. You can stand, she believed. Felicia's heel tapped a frantic staccato. And what are we supposed to do while she digests? Operate under existing management, Price replied. With full transparency to the majority shareholder, Ms. Bakri Thomas. The title startled me. Majority shareholder. My name had never carried weight outside rehearsal posters and open mic flyers. Now it tilted the axis of every person in this room. Malcolm's laughter erupted, sharp, brittle. This is far from over. He leveled a finger at me. I'll bury you in court. I met his eyes, hazel like mine but frigid. Mal, none of this resurrects Mom. Contest if you must. Just know every hour you spend destroying me is another hour the company stalls, the staff doubts, the community wonders. Mom didn't build her name to fund sibling warfare. For a heartbeat, the hurt behind his fury flickered visible. An older brother who once braided my hair into crooked cornrows while Mom tested recipes. Then the mask snapped back. He turned on his heel, Felicia scurrying after. Relatives dispersed in uneasy clumps. Some gave me tentative nods. Others avoided my gaze, as if guilt were contagious. I stayed until only Mr. Price remained, packing folders into a leather briefcase. Your mother kept a private journal. He offered a small brass key. Bottom drawer of her bedroom desk. I suspect you'll find comfort there. His voice softened. Take the time you need, Ms. Nina. Just don't let grief convince you you're alone. I closed my fingers around the key, its teeth biting half-moons into my palm. Thank you. Late afternoon sun glazed the estate's stone facade when I pulled into the drive. The house looked unchanged. Same wisteria twisting the trellis, same copper gutters Dad once polished religiously. Yet every window felt like a watching eye. Inside, the caterers had cleared out. The foyer smelled of lemon oil and leftover resentment. I climbed the sweeping staircase slowly, counting each step like a metronome. Mom's suite occupied the east wing, a room I'd avoided since the funeral viewing had been staged there 2 nights earlier. The door stood ajar, as if she'd just stepped out for tea. I slipped in, closing it behind me. The space was exactly as I remembered. Cream walls, watercolor seascapes, a 4-poster bed draped in indigo throw. On the dresser sat her perfume, same rectangular bottle with the worn silver cap, and a porcelain dish of half-finished bobby pins. Time had paused here. I crossed to the oak writing desk tucked beneath the bay window. The bottom drawer revealed a small brass lock. Hands trembling, I fit the key and turned. The mechanism surrendered with a soft click. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, the color of burnt caramel, pages bulging with inserted clippings. A lavender ribbon marked a midpoint entry. My pulse thudded as I opened to the ribbon. January 22nd. Malcolm insists Nina's too busy to visit. Says she's touring. I tried her old number, no answer, but perhaps she changed phones. I will write again tomorrow. I miss her voice. Tears blurred ink. I turned another page. March 3rd. Saw a YouTube clip of Nina playing Carolina Lullaby in a California club. She closed her eyes on the high notes, same face she made as a toddler humming to the stand mixer. I played it twice before chemo. The nurse says music lowers blood pressure. I think love does. I pressed the page to my lips, tasting salt. Farther in. May 19th. Found the drawer of letters in the study. 43. 43. Malcolm's signature on half the shipment receipts. I don't understand. Why keep us apart? I confronted him. He claimed stress, confusion. But my heart knows deception. I need evidence before I act. And later still, trembling handwriting. July 1st. Ordered the audit. If my instincts are right, money flowed out as letters came in. 2 silences paid with 1 pipeline. Lord, give me strength to set it right for her. I closed the journal, forehead against the cool leather. Grief surged, but beneath it, a fierce protecting heat. She fought to find me. Even when the fight cost her peace with her own son. Dusk crept through lace curtains by the time I made it downstairs. The main kitchen, Mom's kingdom, sat silent. 6-burner range cold, copper pots polished to mute reflections, aprons hung like ghosts of workers gone home. I flicked on a single pendant light over the butcher block island. Shadows leapt back. The hush pressed close, thick with smell of bay leaves and cumin woven into the walls. My footsteps felt disrespectful. Instinctively, I undid my chignon, letting curls tumble. Music always followed hair down rebellions, so I hummed the first melody that surfaced, Mom's favorite hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. The notes hovered tinny in tile echo, but they shortened the distance between now and every dawn I'd watched her knead dough, humming the same tune. Halfway through the refrain, my phone buzzed. Camilla, you alive, maestro? Need update plus proof of life. I snapped a quick selfie, tear-streaked, eyes puffy, faint smile, and texted, Me, battle one.
War pending.
Call you later.
Love.
She sent back a gif of Oprah flinging confetti. I carried the audit envelope and journal to the breakfast nook, spreading everything across the round table like puzzle pieces. Numbers blurred, legal jargon snarled. I'd studied chord charts and Turing contracts, never forensic balance sheets. But patterns emerged, invoices approved by Thomas, COO, payments expedited to vendors with P.O. boxes, same amounts looping back from affiliates to Malcolm's discretionary budget. Each page tightened a vice around my stomach. My brother hadn't just muffled my voice, he'd siphoned our mother's legacy. I flipped to Mom's transition memo, typed bullet points anticipating my confusion. Appoint interim COO, Elaine Jennings, Ops Manager, 22 years tenure. Consultant for Nonprofit Pivot, Dr. Luis Correa, Community Food Labs. Art Plus Culinary Fusion Initiative, proposal drafted, see folder D. Her foresight stunned me. She didn't just gift me a company. She built a scaffold for my leap. Still, dread coiled. What if the board resists? What if investors flee? Panic thrummed like an untuned bass. I exhaled, remembering Camilla's mantra. Fear is proof something matters. Aloud I said, I am my mother's daughter. The kitchen swallowed the words, but left courage in their echo. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. I tensed. The staff had left hours ago. Who's there? My voice broke into the emptiness. A lanky silhouette appeared at the threshold. Cousin Jonah, hands raised in surrender. Didn't mean to scare you, he whispered. Back door was unlocked. I exhaled. You shouldn't be here, Joe. I know. He stepped closer, gaze darting to the audit files. I came to apologize and to warn you. Malcolm's hired a crisis PR team.
Gonna smear you as unfit.
I leaned against the counter. Let him try. Truth leaves traces. Jonah eyed the numbers. Is it bad? Worse than we thought. I tapped a column of six-figure sums. Safety corners cut, bribes disguised as consulting fees. He whistled low. Waterline towers opening in 2 months. If inspectors find out, they will. I folded the audit. Mom wanted the rod exposed. Jonah swallowed. If you need a friend on the inside, I still run logistics. I kept quiet before. I won't again. Warmth flickered. Thank you. He nodded, slipped back toward the door. Over his shoulder. Be careful. Malcolm's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. The door clicked shut. I locked it this time, then returned to the papers, Jonah's warning echoing. Midnight found me curled on the window seat in Mom's study, journal open on my knees, audit balanced on the radiator. Outside, moonlight silvered the wisteria. Inside, the ticking carriage clock measured the slow birth of resolve. Call Elaine Jennings at dawn. Offer interim COO role. Engage Dr. Correa to draft a Food and Arts Foundation proposal. Meet with board. Present audit. Outline corrective plan. Retain counsel for potential litigation, but keep focus on repair, not revenge. Return to LA?
No.
Charleston needs me. Mom needs me still. I closed the journal, pressed my palm to its cover. I won't let her kitchen become a mausoleum, I whispered. Somewhere in the dark house a pipe groaned, old plumbing adjusting to cool night, but it sounded like agreement. I rose, killed the lights, and as I left the study, the moon caught the brass key in my hand, glinting like a tiny torch. Tomorrow, reckoning would continue. Tonight, in the hush my mother once filled with recipes and humming, I allowed myself to believe that inheritance could be more than money or scandal. It could be a second chance to feed myself, the staff, the city, and even, perhaps, the brother who'd lost himself in hungry shadows. 6 months slipped by like pages in a well-thumbed recipe book. Each day a new ingredient, each week a test batch. The Charleston humidity had mellowed into a forgiving September breeze, and Bakwi Thomas catering no longer smelled only of sautéed onions and anxious spreadsheets. It smelled of possibility, of garlic sizzling beside paint thinner, of fresh basil sharing air with wet clay, because somewhere along the way, food and art had started to share the same kitchen. I hadn't set out to become chef executive Nina. I'd set out to keep a promise. The first step was admitting what I didn't know, then hiring people who did. Elaine Jennings, interim COO, handled numbers the way Mom used to knead brioche. Firm, patient, never rushed. She knew every vendor by first name and every line item by heart. Chef Isaiah Brooks, culinarian turned culinary arts mentor, could plate a 5-star meal and teach a kid to dice onions without nicking a finger, all while quoting Baldwin. And Dr. Luis Correa, community planner/nonprofit whisperer, translated my wild dreams into grant proposals that made bankers nod instead of blink. We met every Monday at 7 a.m. in the test kitchen Mom once ruled. No suits, aprons over business casual. Coffee brewed while we audited cost overruns, sourdough proofed while we sketched after-school curricula. Those meetings felt less like corporate briefings and more like jam sessions, everyone riffing until a melody emerged. We kept the profitable wedding and gala contracts, those paid salaries, but we added a new arm. Nourish 326, named after the street number where Mom first sold box lunches. For every high-end event catered, Nourish 326 delivered 10 no-cost meals to community centers and hosted free Saturday workshops for teenage girls interested in culinary careers. The board balked at first, until Isaiah's buttermilk brioche sold out at a pop-up fundraiser and the local paper ran a full-page spread titled Legacy with Soul, How Bakwi Thomas is Feeding Dreams. PR value, priceless. Resistance melted faster than butter on cornbread. We painted the delivery vans indigo, Mom's favorite color, and stenciled food is memory on the doors. People waved when the vans rumbled past. Staff started wearing pins shaped like tiny mixing bowls engraved with MT, Margaret and Bakwi Thomas. I never asked them to. Elaine had them made after a 3 a.m. spreadsheet marathon. Slowly, the building buzzed with a new kind of pride. The pastry team stayed late experimenting with plant and caramel tartlets for the next exhibition. Drivers volunteered to mentor logistics interns. The dishwashers formed a lunchtime drum circle using inverted stock pots. Isaiah turned it into a rhythm workshop. By June, we'd inked the paperwork, the Margaret Foundation for Food and Arts Education. Luis secured seed funding from 2 regional banks, an arts endowment, and, shockingly, a tech entrepreneur who cried over Mom's cinnamon rolls at a charity tasting. We gutted an old bottling warehouse on the east side and drafted plans for a dual-use campus, a teaching kitchen on one end, an art studio on the other, with a herb garden stitched between. When the architectural render came off the plotter, I pinned it to my office wall beside Mom's handwritten biscuit recipe. 2 blueprints, one of dough, one of dreams. News traveled faster than I expected. Aunt Cecily showed up with lemon pound cake and an apology. I was harsh, dear. I see that now. Cousin Trish emailed a resume. She's now assistant event coordinator. Uncle Richard sent a handwritten note heavy with regret and a check to sponsor 3 student scholarships. Some relatives vanished altogether, and I let them. Not all fractures need mending. Some just need quiet. Malcolm's absence, however, felt like a limb gone numb. The board suspended him pending a forensic review. His face disappeared from the website, replaced by Isaiah's grin. Rumor said he'd fled to Atlanta, consulting for a hospitality group. He didn't call, didn't write. I told myself I was relieved. Some nights I believed it. Respect arrived not as applause but as small shifts. The line cooks no longer fell silent when I entered. The finance clerk started CCNG me without Elaine's prompt. Drivers texted me pictures of kids unboxing their first chef coats. And Isaiah, who once side-eyed me like an influencer mascot, slapped a sauté pan after tasting my ginger peach glaze. "Girl, that's church," he declared, then added my initials to the rota for Friday's staff meal. Still, I practiced chords every dusk after work because music was how I breathed. One evening, I left the loading dock door ajar, and the notes drifted through production while the pastry crew battered muffins. Isaiah listened from the spice rack, nodding in time. Food and song, finally sharing the same air. September 14th, ribbon-cutting day for the Margaret Foundation campus. The morning sky was a painter's wash of coral. Rows of folding chairs formed a neat crescent before the refurbished warehouse. City officials fiddled with lapel pins. High school percussionists warmed up the side palette gardens, bursting with basil. I waited backstage in a navy sheath dress, same cut as the one from the will reading, different fabric, softer. Elaine clipped a small mic to my collar. Luis squeezed my shoulder. Isaiah slid me a peppermint, murmuring for stage breath. Camilla had flown in, phone poised for Instagram stories. I felt steadied by that circle of hands. When I stepped to the podium, I expected nerves. Instead, a hush settled over the crowd, anticipation without judgment. I spoke of Mom's folding table, of Bretta's love, of letters once hidden and voices now found. I quoted her journal line that still made my throat tighten. Food is memory, soul, flavor, heart. Then I cut the indigo ribbon with gold scissors that glinted like sunrise. Applause rose, loud enough that I half-turned, half-hoped to see Malcolm in the back row. He wasn't there. The pang was sharp but brief. Purpose quickly filled the space. That night, after speeches and tours, I walked the lit halls alone. Stainless steel ranges gleamed under Edison bulbs. Fresh paint smelled faintly of rosemary. Isaiah insisted on adding herbs to the primer for luck. In the art studio, pinned sketches of chili pepper mandalas fluttered in the AC draft. I traced my fingers along the maple prep tables, feeling the grain pulse under varnish. Mom would have tapped the surface, testing sturdiness, then asked where the volunteers' snack station was. I'd have shown her the pantry stocked with trail mix and Honeycrisps. A notification buzzed in my pocket, board email. Malcolm Thomas officially terminated for cause following ethics inquiry. No emotion, just closure. I swallowed, tucked the phone away. Some chapters seal themselves. 2 days later, dawn broke hazy gold when I parked near Rose Hill Cemetery. Dew jeweled the grass. Cicadas trilled a final summer chorus. I carried a bundle of wild lavender, stems bound with indigo ribbon. Mom's headstone rose beneath the old oak, inscription simple.
Margaretio Macvitomas.
Beloved mother, visionary cook. Food is memory. I knelt, pressing the lavender beside a smooth river stone I'd placed months ago. The scent lifted, sweet and sharp. "You saw me in the end," I whispered, fingertips brushing her name. "And I'll never let them erase you either." Wind stirred the branches. Acorns thudded softly in the grass. The silence here used to bruise me. Now it felt like breath held in gentle expectation. From my tote, I drew a cream cardstock invitation, edges embossed with basil leaves. The Margaret Culinary and Arts Academy. Grand Opening Gala. October 12th, 6 p.m. Feeding craft, crafting community. I laid it atop the lavender. Open house is next month. Front row seat reserved for you. My eyes prickled, but the tears didn't sting. They felt clean, like tidewater over smooth shells. I sat back on my heels, letting the hush settle. No mocking voices, no whispered doubts, just the hum of cicadas, the faint tang of lavender, and the knowledge that legacy can begin again if you're willing to rewrite the recipe. Minutes later, I rose, brushed dew from my knees, and headed for the gate. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long soft beams across the path, the kind of light that makes even gravestones glow. Behind me, the silence stayed. Not cruel, not final, but peaceful, like the rest between notes that lets the song breathe before the chorus returns. Hey besties, thanks so much for sticking around till the end. If you felt something, learned something, or just enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. See you next time, bye.